I've had several experiences, but this one spooked me the most. It happened about 20 years ago in Barcelona. I had a friend, John, and another friend, and I used to go over to John's house to watch movies. I was always very uncomfortable at John's house because something about the house just felt wrong, and the second friend told me he had felt the same thing when we talked about it a few years later. One night I had ridden my motorcycle over to watch a movie, and by the time the movie was over it was pretty late, so John asked if I wanted to spend the night. I slept on the floor in his room, and both he and his roommate left about 6 the next morning for work, so I was alone in the house. About 8 in the morning, I was jarred awake by a loud whisper in my ear. I forcefully felt it and heard it, although I didn't understand what it said. That freaked me so bad that I was up, folded my bed, and was out of the house in about 3 minutes, if that long. As I was pushing my motorcycle down the driveway to leave, I looked back at the living room window. The curtain seemed to be opened a bit unnaturally, and I just knew I was being watched. I got goosebumps. It was so super creepy. After that, I didn't want to go to John's house. If he asked, I just made an excuse, never explained why. One Sunday we were out running errands and he said he needed to stop by his house to talk to his roomie, Alex, really quickly. Reluctantly I went. Alex was in the backyard when we got there, so I stayed in the sitting room by the back door as he went to talk to the roomie. I'm sitting there kinda listening to this conversation. They were speaking Spanish. And I know a bit of Spanish, but I really wasn't listening close enough to figure out what was being said. So, in this conversation I hear John talk for a bit. He had a soft raspy voice and he trills his R's heavily, so I easily recognized his voice, of course. Then, as conversations go, John would go quiet and his roommate would talk. Alex had a very high nasally voice and he spoke extremely fast, so again easy to recognize. And then when both John and Alex were quiet, a third voice would speak. This was a very sensual baritone voice, very noticeable as well. This conversation went on for about 20 minutes as each spoke several times, with two voices quiet while the third spoke. Again, a typical conversation. So, John comes back in the house, and I immediately ask, "Was that your neighbor you were talking to?" He says, "What?" I say, "That other deep voice, was that your neighbor?" And then he says, "There wasn't anyone out there but me and Alex." I'm instantly panicked and quite emotionally insist to John that I heard 3 voices speaking outside the back door. He invites me out to look and to ask Alex as well if there was anyone else outside. I do so and go outside on the back patio, and no one else is outside, and Alex also says it was only John and him talking. I was just freaked. It was then that John and Alex told me that their house was haunted and that these kinds of things happened all the time. Stuff moving, dogs barking at empty spaces, the whole haunting bit. I don't know if I was more relieved to have this understanding and confirmation than they were to have another person witness the haunting. Telling this still gets me emotional 20 years later. Also, I never went back. Let me set the scene. After my freshman year of college, my randomly assigned roommate, turned best friend Sarah, and another girl on our floor who we became close within the dorms decided to rent a house together the following year. The other girl, her stepdad flipped houses and had recently renovated this place that was 3 blocks from campus. A 3-bed that cost us $450 each month, really affordable for a bunch of 17-year-olds. The house itself was gorgeous, with a sunroom, a basement with a washer and dryer, 2 beds on the main floor with a bathroom and basically an upstairs suite with a huge master and walk-in closet, and private bath. The other girl took that whole floor to herself, since it was her dad's place, and didn't pay rent because her family thought she was too busy with cheerleading and her sorority. That's a whole separate conversation leading up to why my best friend and I moved out. The important thing is, my friend and I had the 2 main level rooms just off the living room with a bathroom between us. I don't even remember when the paranormal experiences started. I remember by November, we moved in June. It was enough that our dumbasses did a seance and had already named our ghost Danny. With all the windows closed, we asked her a bunch of questions and she moved the candle different directions for yes and no. Things were really bad for my friend, and mildly annoying for me. This all happened on the main level and the third girl never experienced anything. My friend would experience sleep paralysis frequently and wake up to a woman sitting on top of her, or see her standing in the corner near her closet. The sink in the bathroom between our rooms would turn on and off all night. For me, she would open my door and get into bed with me. The funny thing is, at first I didn't even realize it was the ghost doing that. The third roommate had a cat and I assumed the cat was in bed pretty often. After a while, when I would feel the weight pushing down in the bed, I would keep turning around and no one was there. I'd turn my back and a second later the weight would get closer to me, turn around and nothing. I worked 12-hour shifts on Saturdays and I would be so exhausted I just started to let it happen. It was so frequent it wasn't even worth the fight to get up and close my door or roll over and check the bed. I only saw her once. I was home alone and deep cleaning my room. The light was on in the living room and my room, creating a sort of triangle of darkness in that short hallway. I was pulling the vacuum out of my room when out of the corner of my eye a woman with dark hair was standing behind me. She was so real, both my roommates had dark hair, that I jumped and said, "Oh my god, you scared me," as I was turning around, and when I finished turning, no one was there. That was the first time Danny actually spooked me. My friend and I moved out a few months later due to a lot of issues with the third roommate. In the years following, whenever the experience gets brought up, my friend is near tears talking about the terror that Danny put her through at night, whereas I joke often about how I had a ghost girlfriend cuddling with me at night. I don't know why she was nice to me. In some ways I feel bad that she revealed herself to me, and I was scared of her. She seemed harmless, just active. Then again, she was so awful to my friend, and that's also unexplainable. I think the funniest part of this story though, is when constantly living with an active entity, you do eventually get used to whatever they're doing. Between art school for my friend and classes plus 40-hour weeks of work at a standing job, at some point I need sleep no matter who's in bed. I have a few paranormal events that happened all throughout my life. Most of them were pretty tame, but there is one that got to me and still sticks with me today. About 3 years ago, I was ending my freshman year at college. I had lived in the dorms with a kick-ass roommate and pretty much had a great experience altogether. Towards the end of my last semester, something seemed different in my hall of the dorms. We were all still our lively selves, but just walking into the dorms would give you this massive feeling of dread. We all wrote it off as the stress of finals approaching, but it just felt off. Well, one night after studying, I decided to hit the shower so I can just wake up and make my way to class in a few hours. Our hall was one of many halls on a single floor. Each hall had 4 rooms that accommodated 2 people each, or a single room for the RAs. The entrance to the halls were massive steel doors with a small window located at one end, and across from it was the bathroom. It seriously felt like a prison block rather than a living quarter for college students. As for the bathroom itself, when you walked in, you were immediately met with 2 sets of sinks on your left and right, with massive mirrors facing each other, and creating that infinite loop of mirrors. Then past that, you had your 2 urinals and a toilet stall on your left, and 2 showers on your right. When facing the left set of sinks, you could clearly see into the showers from the mirror, if the door is open, and in the right set of sinks, you could see the reflection of the shower. The door of the bathroom was identical to the entrance to the hall, a massive steel frame with a small window that didn't allow for much of a view, with good reason. The door was propped open with a giant wooden wedge that couldn't be moved unless you were really trying to close that door. So back to the story. I'm all alone in the bathroom gearing up to go shower. I throw my change of clothes on the right side sink so that way I can reach around the stall and grab them. Once I set my stuff down, I happen to look up into the mirror and I can see in the distance something almost shimmering inside the shower stall. As I look at it, I notice that it slowly gets closer, like it's jumping from the furthermost layer to the next layer closer. I'm kind of unsettled, but I don't think much of it other than me coming down off of a massive energy drink and caffeine kick. But it starts transitioning faster. As it gets closer, I can start making out details, but nothing vivid or striking. It's just a dark mass that looks like it's covered in hair. At this point, I'm freaking out hardcore since this thing is getting closer in the mirror and I'm pretty much frozen to this one spot. As it gets to the 4th layer, I get the closest look at this thing I'll ever get, and I regret every minute of it. It wasn't hair but some kind of long flowing veil. You could see through it partially, but from the torso down it was just solid black. And the face, I can't describe it. It was clearly human, but at the same time it was so far removed. There were eyes, they were black but definitely glowing somehow. I only saw this for maybe a second at the most, but it's burned into my mind forever. Then the lights cut out and I hear the door slam. It's pitch black in the bathroom, so I can't see this thing anymore. I go to open the door but it won't budge, and then this intense smell hits me out of nowhere, and that's all I remember. I woke up later in the hospital from what my floor leader claims he was on his way to go use the bathroom sometime after this happened, where he found me in the shower stall with my shirt stained by my nosebleed. He tried asking me what happened, and according to him all I could respond with was "it saw me," and I start freaking out. So he calls an ambulance and they get me to the hospital. All the while I'm apparently freaking out, so they sedate me to get me to calm down. I'm coming to around the time my parents arrive, deeply concerned, of course. When I asked them what happened, they explained that the doctors suspected I had a seizure. However, they conducted CAT scans soon after I cooperated, revealing no signs of any seizure occurring. Moreover, epilepsy doesn't run in my family, and despite having taken caffeine and energy drinks countless times before, and since then, I've never experienced similar side effects, like hallucinations or potential seizures. Interestingly, there were no reports of paranormal activity in those dorms before that incident, and there have been none since I left. It remains an isolated event, surrounded by unanswered questions. To this day, I haven't experienced any episodes like epileptic attacks or fainting spells again. However, I've quit the habit of excessively consuming caffeine or energy drinks. It's been very strange. Sometimes I think I dreamed it all, but when I try to think about it, I feel a sense of unease and nostalgia that makes me want to cry. I never want to feel that way again. Additionally, I still can't bring myself to look into a mirror for more than a minute, and just being stuck in a room with one for an extended period will just cause me to break down.